the last story that we have here.
Sure.
And it's an important one, I think, even though it also kind of doesn't matter. And as a story, the headline here is from the American Conservative, written up by Kurt Mills. And Trump campaign feels cheated from his foreign policy debate. They've actually issued a complaint to whatever the Presidential Debate Commission about the topics for the debate. The topics listed are fighting COVID, American families, race in America, climate change, national security, and leadership. Um, but they leave off, foreign policy. I think one of the problems is traditionally the third debate is a foreign policy debate, or at least that's the main subject of that debate. And it hasn't happened at all. I'm guessing that incumbents typically like the foreign policy debate because they have the ability to say to their opponent, well, I have all the latest intel and everything like that, and if the American people knew really what was going on, they would vote for me even harder because I'm what's keeping them safe and stuff like that. And I'm sure Donald Trump would really play up that aspect. Of course, there's the issue with Ukraine that I think would likely come up a lot more in a foreign policy debate. But leaving Ukraine aside, and we could talk about that later. One of the things that Kurt Mills highlights in his article here, that the Trump campaign came up with, is actually they want to talk more about his Iran policy. Believing that the Trump is an Iran hawk is a popular position. That's something that they want to bring up, which was insane to me because I feel like Iran is Trump's biggest foreign policy failure. That's, I would think, the one topic he would want to avoid. I mean, you went over all the diplomatic efforts they made to keep, different sanctions, get snapback sanctions, the arms embargo, all that they tried to keep on Iran. And even our own allies rejected our proposals at the UN. And so, it seems that getting out of the deal was, the Iranian nuclear deal was a huge blunder. And the Trump administration, I'm not quite sure how they could really spin that or sell that as a success, but that does seem to have been their plan, I guess. If they went forward with a foreign policy debate, and so I don't know. Well, what do you think about them not talking more about foreign policy during the debates? And I don't know if you have anything. If you thought, or I guess I'm hoping that Trump still brings up the Ukraine issue. But my initial thought when I read this headline was that maybe the commission is trying to duck that particular topic.
Yeah, that would not surprise me. I mean, they completely avoided it during that Biden town hall. Like, they didn't even mention it at all. Like, they didn't even give him a softball to just like hit out of the park and deny it or something. They just ignored it as if it's never happened. It's kind of ridiculous, like a 13th floor on an apartment or whatever. However, yeah, it's funny. I hadn't actually heard the part about Trump wanting to sell his whole Iran policy. That's kind of ridiculous, especially because his whole thing, though, his all along has been that like I'll be such a tough, big, mean, tough guy to Iran that they'll come back and sign a much better deal than Barack Obama got, and that's like completely miserably failed. It's like that's not going to happen by November. So I guess like his goal would just be to turn around and just try to sell like hawkishness for its own sake. That like look at how good we've been at punishing the evil Iranians or something. I guess that would be his sort of like his approach. But I guess he could still get into that. I know that his campaign manager, what's his name, Bill Stepien, I think, said that Trump does still intend to bring up the Hunter Biden stuff. So he very well may try to also get in, shoehorn in the Iran stuff as well. I'm not really surprised that they forewent foreign policy here. Like, I wouldn't have been surprised if they held like, 10 debates that are all on COVID and race relations. Seems like that's all they've talked about in any like campaign things, whether it's town halls or debates or whatever. So I mean, yeah, it's not that surprising, but I guess even if they were to talk about foreign policy, even if that were like a topic on the agenda, I wouldn't expect that much like substantial, debate or discussion. But it is just kind of like, it's not even, it doesn't even warrant a moment of discussion, before the American people. It's only like what I guess I was gonna say it's only the most expensive policy of the government, but since COVID, I guess that's kind of changed. Some of those relief bills have been sort of like the most costly things government's been doing. But nonetheless, these are some of the most costly and destructive policies that government implements ever, like foreign policies. And apparently, the American people don't even deserve to, hear a word about that during the debates. Just COVID and race relations, I guess, all day.
Yeah, I really think that last point you made is the most important one. That is, foreign policy is typically the most expensive policy, and it may not come out that way this year. Although with all the COVID bailout money that's ended up going to defense contractors, we actually may be able to argue that the defense budget stays bigger than even the COVID bailout budgets. I mean, like,
Right.
look, a lot of the bailouts end up going to companies like Boeing, and I guess they could say, oh, it's for our civilian end or something like that, but maybe they don't make the crappy 737 MAX speed that flies right into the ground if they didn't spend so much money trying to, lobby Congress and basically get on the Pentagon, honeypot, and that seems to be their bigger business model these days. And so yeah, I mean those bailouts, and then I think there was like $1 million or something that was supposed to go to defense contractors to make like masks and stuff like that, and they just bailed out different companies, just gave them money to make like engine parts, not masks or anything like that.
Yeah, we
um
covered that on the show, I think, right? The bailout money that just went to arms dealers.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that was on conflicts of interest. If not, it's in the foreign policy focus archive. But the last thing that you mentioned is the most important. That is, the American people really deserve to hear what the candidates feel on foreign policy, because it is $1 trillion a year part of the budget. It's the lives of young Americans who will be sent overseas to die in these pointless wars, or the lives of just random people throughout the Middle East or Asia or Africa who are going to be the subject of U.S. drone strikes and airstrikes, even if they're just a young kid on their way to school, or a bunch of Afghani tree nut farmers tired from a long day of work, kind of just hanging out and trying to relax a little bit and get blown up by a U.S. drone strike. That's what we're talking about here. And it's apparently not even worthy of a portion of a single debate. I guess there's only two debates this time, so that's supposed to change things up a little bit, but you would think that they would at least maybe hollow out like a half hour of one of the two debates to specifically talk about foreign policy, and at least ask the candidates, hey, if you're president in 2024, when you leave office, are U.S. troops going to be in Afghanistan? How many troops do you think will be in Afghanistan? Ask the same question for Iraq, Somalia, Yemen, etc. At least to have the candidates have publicly stated that their foreign policy position on this war is this. And that, I mean, that's just not going to happen. And you mentioned it could have happened also at the town hall, and it didn't happen there. So we're really running out of time and opportunities. And it just goes to show, I think, that there really is like kind of a deep state or a blob in the U.S., and foreign policy really isn't up for debate. It's not something that's up for the ballot. It's not something that the American people get to decide on. It's set by the bureaucrats and the permanent deep state in Washington D.C., and then they then give money to their weapons makers who help funnel money to the think tanks, who put out
That's right.
reports that are on the mainstream media that say if we don't go to war, we're all dead. And that's kind of our situation right now, Will. And unfortunately, the American people aren't going to get to hear the two candidates to whatever ability they even have to speak on these issues. I guess the only thing that doesn't bother me about this is how high level of a talk would Biden and Trump even be able to have on Iran? And if 100 million Americans heard Trump and Biden talk about Iran, my guess is that most of them would end up more disinformed than actually informed about the situation. But anything else on this, Will?
Just I'll just agree with the last thing you said there. It might be the case, even if they did talk this stuff, it might actually do the public a disservice anyway. But it is just sort of the principle of it that they just, like, the debate commission doesn't even think it warrants a single segment. So it's not so much the fact that, oh, we would have gotten such a great erudite foreign policy, international relations discussion between these great scholars, Trump and Biden, but it's just the principle of it that I think is just like a real slap in the face.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. Well, I think the last debate is coming up on Thursday, Will. So maybe our last show of the week will be a debate recap, or at least we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that on the next show. Although, unless Donald Trump brings up Ukraine or Iran just kind of out of nowhere, it doesn't seem like we're going to have a whole lot of foreign policy topics to discuss in the debate.
Well, I'll be transcribing the thing, so I won't miss it.
Oh, you're a brave man, Will. All right, everyone. If you want to check out all of Will's great work, I mean, he does write up stories at RT, and then he shares them out on his Twitter handle every morning. So follow him at the Will Porter. Check out my daily news roundup that I write for the Libertarian Institute at Kyle Anslone _. Check out the show on Twitter at con_interest. The show is hosted online at the Libertarian Institute, so you could go there for the show notes page. We have a Facebook page, Conflicts of Interest. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Conflicts of Interest, and check out the video version of the show. Last, you could donate to the show at patreon.com/conflicts of interest. Me and Will are working on, putting that together and getting it a little bit nicer. Did want to have a few more episodes under our belt before we start asking y'all to start sending us some money. But it's getting about to that time, and hopefully we'll put together some decent Patreon tiers that incentivize y'all to give us a little bit more money. But if you've been listening to this show and you've been thinking, hey, I'm going to throw those guys a few bucks for the good work they've been doing, you do that at Patreon for now, and hopefully we'll have some other avenues to donate us money soon. Will, anything I missed?
You got it all, man.
All right. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Kyle. Bye, everybody.